Kep wanted to get back to Boston ASAP, but the country and history still weren't safe. The second half of the mission remained. John Hancock and Samuel Adams were hiding out at a parsonage nearby. The two leaders needed to remain out of British hands and nooses if this revolution had a chance. Church bells rang in the distance 12 times. Midnight, April 19, 1775. Goosebumps rose along his arms. Talk about historic moments. What was Max thinking back in Boston? More important, was he okay? He and Tella and TJ, were they all safe? At a fork in the road, Kep heaved a sigh of relief at the sight of a building, lights gleaming from the windows, right where the deserter had told him it would be. He'd made it to Lexington. So that had to be Buckman's Tavern. The map showed the parsonage close to the tavern. He guided his mount to the right, almost at the finish line. An extra jolt of urgency shot through Kep as the deserter's words rang in his ears. "The redcoats are asking the whereabouts of Hancock and Adams. Some say capture or assassination." What if the enemy patrols had found them first? He soon spotted the parsonage sitting back from the road. In the front yard, he slid from his horse, tied the reins to a tree, and jogged toward the house. "What's your business?" A stocky man stepped from the darkness of the porch. "I need to talk to Adams and Hancock." "Who says they're here? And keep your voice down. The family don't want to be disturbed." "Disturbed? 700 redcoats are headed this way." Kep's voice rose with every word. "They're gonna be disturbed." He started up the front steps, but the man blocked his way with a rifle barrel. A window squeaked open on the second floor, and a man poked his head out. "I persuade myself this racket has a purpose?" "This boy says he's got a message for Hancock and Adams," called the guard. "Send him in." The man lowered his rifle, and Kep clambered up the remaining stairs as fast as his sore legs, not to mention backside, would carry him. He needed to get these guys out and fast. Hopefully they had horses ready and a getaway destination. A man in a lavender silk robe with matching cap waved Kep into a parlor and lit a candle. His eyes flicked from Kep's wildly oversized coat to his mud-caked boots. "No time to spare," Kep panted, catching his breath. "Adams and Hancock are in danger. Big danger." Kep's urgency didn't seem to be communicating itself to this man, who'd paused in front of a mirror to smooth his robe. "Look, mister, I've got to talk to Hancock and Adams." The man sank gracefully onto a sofa. "I am John Hancock." "Really?" Kep glanced from the man's lavender sleep cap to his flower-embroidered slippers. Hancock followed his gaze and swung a foot. "Moroccan. Newest fashion." This guy? The legendary Hancock? The first to sign the Declaration of Independence in bold strokes saying, "King George will be able to read that without his spectacles." The president of the Second Continental Congress? The man who'd chart a new course in history? Somehow Kep had expected him to look more heroic. Regardless, the guy needed to clear out. Fast. The king had put a 500-pound prize on that silk-capped head. "You need to get out! And Adams, too!" "What's all this infernal racket?" The scowling, stooped man in a threadbare nightshirt shuffled in. "By whose order am I to get out?" "Allow me to introduce Samuel Adams," said Hancock, with a sweep of his hand. Kep blinked at the gray-haired man, whose hands trembled as if he were 100 years old. This was the most dangerous man in Massachusetts? "Afraid we failed to catch your name?" Hancock's tone implied Kep was short on good manners. Talk about missing the big picture. "Kep Westgard, but it doesn't matter. What matters is you're on the British hit list." "Hit list?" Hancock's brows floated up. "As in, a list of people they want dead or jailed," Kep said. "And redcoats are marching tonight with that list." "Indeed." Hancock bounded up from the sofa and crossed the room, his robe swirling around his ankles. "I must find my sword." Kep's jaw dropped. Find his sword? Now Lavender Man goes all macho? There's an entire army, Kep said. Highly trained, heavily armed. He paused to let it sink in, but Hancock fished a sword from what looked like an umbrella stand, grabbed a lace handkerchief from his pocket, and began buffing the silver. Never let it be said a Hancock ran from those pernicious British. Adams, the famous American who'd brewed up the Boston Tea Party, and to Kep, clearly the brighter of the two, shook his head. We should escape. We are politicians, not soldiers. It was a no-brainer, but Hancock didn't rush to pack. Don't you get it? Kep's voice cracked. They'll hang you. Hancock seemed unperturbed. He drew himself to his full height, swiveled to face the mirror, and jabbed his sword, fluttering his silk sleeves. I am not a man to run from conflict. Kep opened his mouth to argue when Adams wagged a finger at him, wrapped his bony hand around Kep's elbow, and dragged him out the parlor door. The guy, with his deep wrinkles and thin gray hair, was stronger than he appeared. When they got out of earshot, Adams locked his gray eyes onto Kep's. I will reason with my old friend in private. You've got to get out! The country needs you both! Big time! Odd habits of speech you have. Adams merely escorted Kep to the front porch, where the guard still lurked. Take the message to Concord. Adams stepped back inside, closing the door firmly. Kep's throat clenched. Even if Concord saved its weapons, the country needed these leaders. Alive. Kep wanted to bang his head, or preferably Hancock's, against the wall. He could hardly tie them up and drag their butts out. He'd warned them, same as Revere had over 200 years ago. Well, it was over 200 years ago now, but never mind that. Had Revere been more convincing? Ignoring the guard, he raised his hand to pound on the door when Adams' quaking voice came through the open parlor window. The boy is correct. If we're captured now, they hold the upper hand. Kep moved to the window, peering in. Adams' face was grim as he spoke. Our place is in the cabinet. That is where our duty lies. The two American legends, standing in their pajamas, facing each other, hardly looked like the supermen who would lead a revolution against the most powerful country in the world. Maybe this time they wouldn't. Kep's hands squeezed into fists. Fox would win. Tell Jenkins to bring my carriage around, ordered Hancock, and to pack that perch in the ice house. And wine. Carriage? Yes. Perch and wine? Seriously? The guard sprang into action, but Kep worried whether Hancock would change his mind again. Did he need to babysit these two out of town? On the other hand, had Concord been warned yet? He hadn't heard a crackle of gunfire. What if that Minuteman captain had gotten caught on his way out of town? How far's Concord? He called to the guard. 7 miles that-a-way. The guard jerked a thumb as he rushed toward the stables. How many of their 24 hours had they used up? Despite feeling burned out and brain-frazzled, Kep untethered his horse and shoved his foot into the stirrup. Like Revere in another place and time, he'd see the message through. Kep set off rubbing the tiredness from his eyes and scanning the low stone walls on either side of the road. 7 miles. The wind had picked up and clouds raced across the moon. A flash of movement. 2 redcoats charged from the night shadows, one on either side of the road. Halt! Shouted one. Kep kicked his horse's sides and barreled between them, but 2 more soldiers charged from ahead. Halt or we'll shoot! The narrow road left little room for maneuvers. 2 soldiers ahead, 2 behind. Kep had a moment's indecision. He'd counted 4 guns. In the darkness, a gun hammer clicked. Game's up! Kep got a sinking feeling. He wasn't a stuntman in a movie. No second takes. No fake bullets. But to stop now would be total surrender. Revere wouldn't stop. Jerking the reins to the left, he urged his horse to jump and sailed over a low stone wall. He scrambled to hang on as they landed hard on the other side. Heedless of shouted threats, Kep galloped away at breakneck speed, expecting a lead ball to punch into his back at any second.